we had one key point from the PowerPoint at the beginning, and we talked about bare metal servers and home computer nodes, which are how people most often conceptualize a Jormungandr stake pool or a pool operator. So there's one more example we need to touch on. Some of the pool operators are going to run nodes out on the internet in a cloud server, Amazon Web Service cloud server, or Ionos, or any of the big brands out there, or any brand for that matter. Are there any specific vulnerabilities or attack surfaces that pool operators need to be aware of when using a cloud service?
Sometimes Amazon goes down. It happens. If everybody's on Amazon, then they're all down. So definitely wouldn't want to have all of the core servers on Amazon. That's one thing that comes to mind.
Also, you're again delegating your security, so you always have to keep that in mind. Like we have these frequent debates about whether or not to include external JavaScript into pages, websites during penetration tests of web applications, and we go back and forth on this debate all the time. The general idea is if you load a script from an external source and they get hacked, they can change the script to be something else malicious, and then it ends up in your website. And in a similar fashion, Amazon controls the server under which you are using. If they decide to, they could look into your server and grab your keys. And who knows what employee somewhere in a data center is disgruntled with Amazon and wants to leave with a huge boatload of money, or any of the keys that reside on said server, any other information that they can find. It of course, when you delegate stake, you don't delegate the actual ADA, so that's good. You actually delegate the right to vote, which is a very nice key to remember. So it's less of a huge threat in that case, but people are going to do it. It's nobody wants to sit a server in the middle of their house and have it screaming 24/7. So yeah, it's going to happen. You just have to remember that you're delegating some of your security to a third party.
I never even thought of that. Oh my gosh! So if I run a cheap, I had a low budge cloud server one time. Mm-hmm. By default, it did not have antivirus running. It's just sitting out there in a large business cloud service. It was like a 2 gig RAM, two core server out there in the world somewhere, and I could SSH into it or pull it up on a web page. It didn't have an antivirus scanner running on it.
No.
Will the outer perimeter of that business protect it from an antivirus scanner? I don't think it will.
Well, that also depends, because Amazon Web Services are not bad, right? Insofar as generally deployed servers go, right? But you're still responsible for the configuration of the server. They'll give you some blank Ubuntu or some blank Debian distro or some blank Windows, whatever Windows people use these days, and you'll have to configure it just like you configure something at your home, except for the fact that you have to be very considerate of, that people are going to try to attack this thing. It's not like your computer at home in the general sense. They can 24/7 run scanning software against it.
You have to be willing to do things the hard way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to like Amazon, they have security teams. They're going to be better at the security of the infrastructure than you are probably. But yeah, on the server itself or whatever web pages or web apps you're running, you have to be willing to do it the hard way. Actually follow the best practices. It's not hard to find from the various software vendors what the best practices are for setting things up. And just do it. It's harder, but it's better in the long run. Easier in the long run. You don't have to recover from a hack.
Yeah. That was a surprise. It was a surprise. I didn't think that someone can, a disgruntled employee, if you're running it in the cloud, they could take a copy of that server and just say, or they can look at it.
They usually have a backdoor of getting into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And red teams have to think about that all the time, because we're not just defending against outside threats, we're defending against internal ones as well. What access each employee has, what access each person has. And that's why you have, even within like people who have card systems to get into their places of business, they'll know because their cards don't work everywhere in the building, and that's for a reason. Because you can't trust everybody with everything.
You can't trust those cards either. There's like
exactly. Yeah.
proxy clone devices where you can just walk up and you just kind of brush up against a person when they're in line at the deli and it clones their card.
Yep. Yeah, you guys have no idea. That's a whole other world in by itself. You just walk by people, and there are even whole sets of people who are so fascinated by this. They're not generating. They're building antennas that can read cards from feet or even meters away. So they just walk by people and get a bunch of badges for some police thing somewhere and just walk in.
What about a tangent card? It has a near field comms that you touch on the back of the phone. Of course, It doesn't work with iPhone, but if you have an Android, okay, tangent card, that's near field. Is that the kind of thing that could be scanned, bumped?
Basically, anything that's near field, any RFID card or any near field card probably can be read. The question is how it does its authentication mechanism. So some of them will actually do a request. So the machine will request of the card, and the card will do some processing, send back a response, and it'll do that several times. And that's a little bit better than currently most of the cards out there, where they just basically say, "Hi, I'm ID 002A. Do I have access to this building?" And the building goes, "Let me look that up in the database." Yep, you do. And that's pretty much the way most of them work these days, still to this day. So I don't know that specific card's implementation, but there are varying types, and whether or not it's vulnerable to something currently, I don't know. But
some of them are, the processor is actually powered from the radio signal, has enough energy in it that'll power the processor. But I mean, if you're talking about like security and cards and stuff, I was able to compromise one building by taking a paperclip and taping it to the thing where it was pushed up against the magnet. So when somebody came through and opened the door, the paperclip popped up in there, and that little gap was just enough to keep the door from locking.
Wow.
That's where you get into the world of physical security tests. Yeah.